It is reasonable to hope that in the not-too-distant future, we shall be competent to understand so simple a thing as a star. Thanks for tuning in to Vaguely Scientific. I am Derek. My co-host, as always, is Jim? Is that correct?
Correct as usual, Derek.
Ha! And our guest this week might be Allie. Hi, Allie.
Hey.
Awesome. I got it right.
Yeah, it's me.
Good thing you wrote all this down on the back of your hand.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I have.
Thankfully, Jim and I have, like, really short names, so it's, like, pretty easy.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's, like, 6 letters you gotta remember.
Yeah. Anyone who has, like, more than 2 syllables, like, I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah.
Christoph... what? Just Christoph. Just
Oh,
leave
Christoph, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
Christoph.
that guy. Oh, what about that Jonna guy?
Oh, Jonna? Yeah. He
I
hasn't
feel like
been on
there's a
in
third
while.
syllable at the end of that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably Jonna Fum.
It might be Jonna Lana Bing Bang.
Is
Bong.
this staying in?
I hope not.
Do we want to try this one more time?
You have control over that, Jim. Well, this is a show where we answer the most ridiculous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific. Hopefully you do too. But before we tackle those questions, I believe it is time once again for Jim's fun science fact of the day. Jim?
Yeah, I found this out a while ago, but I still think it's interesting every time I read about it. Apparently, space smells kind of like like an acrid smell, like gunpowder or like a burnt steak. That's just what space smells like, apparently. Now, obviously, people aren't taking off their helmets and taking a big whiff of space, but it is sort of the smell that follows them into the spacecraft after they've been out doing a spacewalk or wandering around on the moon or what have you. So, yeah. Space smells burnt.
If it has an odor, that means there are particles that are interacting with your olfactory glands, which means it can't be legitimate space, right?
Well, I mean, even in space, I think they say there's like 1 atom per cubic meter or something like that. There's still a little bit of stuff out there.
Oh, okay.
It's just super vacuumy and will kill you.
I wonder...
And will kill.
I wonder to an extent, like, what... If it's more... an issue with the hardware than the environment, where it's like our body expects something. So if it doesn't have anything, it just is like, burnt meat. That's what's here.
Like it fills in the gap.
Yeah.
Like our vision does that.
Yeah, our brains are
Oh,
really
yeah.
good at filling in pieces that are missing. And so I wonder if it's just that if nothing's there, it'll just be like, sure, meat. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I always wondered if it was like, I don't know, space radiation or cosmic rays just like burning the outside layer of their spacesuit and then like when they go back in, it's all just like floats off.
What you're smelling is the odor of your imminent demise.
Yeah. Either way, whichever one of those things is correct, that's still true.
That's true. All right. Well, before we move on, we have some housekeeping to take care of. So it's time once again to revisit that segment, stuff we got wrong and actually bothered to look up later. And I did a deep dive on this one.
Okay.
So in episode 89, Carapace is Full of Malice, I was a bit confused about the pluralization of the word carapace, and you may note that at the top of that last sentence, I did pluralize it correctly.
It's a good thing that because I didn't look into this, so I just named the episode. So all the things you're about to say, I'm glad that apparently that's not wrong, right?
Well, it's the pronunciation, because it could have been carapaces.
Oh, I see.
Interestingly enough, the reason so many people have trouble with different ways to pronounce and pluralize words is that so many words don't follow the standard add an S rule that we were all taught first, right? to the best of my research, there's a reason for this. And also a reason when it makes sense not to follow that rule. Much of the English language is built out of various different origins, and it's probably common knowledge that Latin evolved and branched out into the Romance language, like Spanish, French, Italian, and several others. But English borrows from both Latin, its descendants, and also completely unrelated sources as well. Generally, you pluralize words by adding an S, unless it ends in an S already, which would make it sound clunky. However, words that are specifically from other languages, such as the Latin word alumnus, are pluralized according to the rules of their original language. Alumnus becomes alumni. So here's an interesting contradiction to that rule. If a word is built out of elements from another language but still is actually an English word, it raises some debate as to whether or not it should follow English rules or not. The best example of this is the word octopus. Most people pluralize octopus as octopi. That's the most common one, and that's according to Latin rules because it's a Latin word, or so we all assume. But it's actually not. Octo is the Latin word for the number 8, but the Latin word for octopus, the animal, is actually polypus. And calling a polypus an octopus is translating the Greek word thapori into the Latin for 8 feet, which was thought to have been done originally as an English adaptation. So some people argue that octopus should therefore follow Greek rules instead of Latin, which would make the pluralization octopodes. However, some would argue that because it's a modern English word that just is derived from Greek origin, it should just be octopuses. And the legitimate reason dictionaries prefer not to use octopuses is that people think it sounds vulgar. And just as a side note, I tend to use all 3 of these interchangeably depending on what I feel like saying at any given time, and you've probably heard me do that many times on this show.
Yeah.
I really love octopodes. That's like, I love it.
Is that really like how that's supposed to be said? It's not octopodes?
No, it would be octopodes because it would follow the emphasis structure from Greek.
Wasn't there a thing you came up with many, many years ago that was like octopodes, the octopus butler?
That does sound like something I've done before. But yeah, it's similar to like, it follows the structure of like Archimedes would be kind of be something else we would think of.
I don't know if it's pronounced exactly how we're pronouncing it, but yeah.
Right, but it turns out in college I met several people who insisted that octopodes was the correct pronunciation because it's Greek origin, this whole thing.
Sure.
Which, of course, led me to figure out, is that actually true? And turns out there is no official answer, and really octopuses would make the most sense based on just the English language.
Yeah, but I don't like it.
But nobody likes it. That's the thing. No,
and it's harder to say than both of the other two.
Yeah, I like octopodes. I think it's fun to say. Octopi is probably the default, though.
Yeah, I like the octopi because it rolls off the tongue.
Can you say the Latin one more time? The
Polypus.
Polypus. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be many legs, basically.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I didn't expect this to happen, but we've kind of led into a good segue into a theme.
Oh yeah.
Because our next question deals with some other aquatic animals. So why don't we talk about our first question this week?
Great.
Question 1 this week comes to us from Aaron. Could dolphins form a civilization, and what might it be like?
The one thing I always think of, and this is something I think of more with space than with dolphins, but making a civilization underwater would be challenging in one specific aspect, and that is that you do not have fire or really any good chemistry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it's doable, and there are enough planets in space that eventually someone would figure it out, but I always think to myself, it'd be really, really difficult for an underwater civilization of any sort, really, to become spacefaring, because they would first have to basically conquer land by making their own space suits to then figure out how to make fire and do chemical reactions and things like that. So I feel like there's a really big hurdle that any underwater civilization is going to have to technology, at least. Not necessarily civilization. And of course, civilization does not imply technology, but I always like to bring that up first because I think it's fascinating.
There is a Halloween episode of The Simpsons where the dolphins just reveal that they could have walked on land at any point.
I just didn't want to.
And they just didn't want to.
Who would?
Until they needed to conquer Earth because the humans ruined it all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, to be fair, most of the ocean, or most of the planet's ocean, so why would you want to come out of the ocean? You got more ocean than land.
You got more ocean than land. It's good. So, yeah, I thought about, you can't have really electricity, especially unless you have the ability to first make insulated wire, which requires opposable thumbs as far as I can tell.
And it requires chemistry.
And it requires chemistry. And I thought about, I don't know how we would get to this point, so I'm jumping a few steps, but like a way you could power things under the ocean is
Redstone.
Maybe using, yes, but like currents, like the current of the water, if you could like build sort of an underwater water wheel type thing.
Oh, yeah. Actually, redstone doesn't work underwater. I don't know why I said that.
I don't know why you said that either. I just kind of accept it. And so one thing I thought was maybe like might have a day job of like swimming around in big circles to create like a current of water. I don't know.
I mean, that works. Mechanical energy.
I like that. That kind of gives me like Dinotopia vibes. Like,
ooh,
thinking of God, I do this every time I'm on the show, and I don't mean to. I promise. I don't mean to talk about Dinotopia and Animorphs every single time I'm here.
Guys, I was waiting for Allie to talk about Animorphs.
I'm not going to. I am going to talk about Dinotopia, though. It's one or the other. But both, I mean, right? It has that vibe of like, you know, give the dinosaurs a job, give the dolphins a job, where they have like, I don't know, the wheels to create different currents and stuff like that. But I think that for the most part, we are all considering things like bottlenose dolphins or porpoises. But I want to think a little bit bigger as well with things like killer whales or false killer whales. And because some of them are known to actually go on land to catch food on a good day.
Like the moose.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea of a civilization, there are a few things that are required for something to be a civilization.
Oh, okay.
I remember talking about this in my Anth classes, and there are a lot of like back and forths on things where it's like, well, is it a civilization the moment they have things like architecture and like large population centers, like when when ostensibly people intentionally populate an area and settle in a place. And then they have, you know, monuments or architecture that is unique. If they have a system for creating food sources, whether that is like hunting, gathering, but returning to a location, or if it is agriculture, which there's some back and forth there where it's like it has to be agriculture or it doesn't have to be agriculture.
Well, I'm wondering, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Please.
But I'm wondering, because we've studied like lion prides where they have kind of that societal, the lionesses go out and hunt and I don't know, would that count?
Well, they don't have architecture, which is like the building of a population center. Like
gotcha.
that is important. Like they have to have a structure of some sort to house the population.
Is that I feel like I might have missed something here, but would that mean that things like ants and termites could technically be considered civilization?
Well, it sounds like this is a thing that is up for debate. That's probably why.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I was thinking they have like a hierarchical structure. They have, you know, construction
Yeah.
and engineering projects.
They have food sources that they house.
Yeah. Leafcutter ants farm.
To be fair, though, ants, specifically ants, like we call the matriarch, I guess, of an ant society a queen. But the queen isn't like actually in charge, like a system of government.
True.
That's just what we call it based on our systems of government.
I didn't vote for that queen.
Right. I think to that point, anytime we talk about animals in any way, I always want to phrase, because in American society in general, we have a problem with anthropomorphizing animals and being like, oh, well, this equates to this in human society, so it's the same.
Right.
You know, when I had a snake, people would always be like, oh, like, do you think she likes you? And I'm like, no, like, I don't. Like, she has no idea what I am. Like, there's, you have to understand that the level of thought and function and process isn't the same, so it cannot be a one-to-one. I'm not saying that, like, not to take the fun out of the room and like take the air out of the question, but like it's just one of the things that I think is a problem for us as Americans, because we see all these like, oh, like the cute little lion and the mother's taking care of it, and it's like, no, like they're surviving. It's different.
I know this animal thinks of me as its family, and like likely it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, like domesticated animals, but when we're talking about things that are wild or things that have not been, like, specifically domesticated for a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There are tons of studies about, like, dogs and stuff that they, like, legitimately love their people.
Right.
Yes, that's true. But I also think it's dangerous to be like, I don't know, my dog understands when I'm sad. Like, no, like they probably understand that you're making noise that's strange, but I don't know how far that goes. Anyway, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
Well, it reminded me of several years ago. I took a falconry class.
Oh wow!
It was free, and I was like, why
Jealous?
not? I didn't get to actually like interact with any of the birds or anything, but one of the things that I learned was they always have to tell people these birds are not your friends. They're not bonding with you like a pet. And that they don't like see you as a companion. They are trained to do a specific job. And and people want them to be like cute animal companion things.
Yeah. Like Disney princesses.
Like Disney, yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, so when we're talking about dolphins, like, there are actually several attributes for dolphins that would be considered quite evil if we put them in human society.
Oh, hello. I'm ready.
Quite evil. Dolphins are horrible creatures that do horribly evil things. But they don't have that. They don't have that knowledge. Like they don't have this morality. Yeah. It's arguable. It's not arguable. There are plenty of tests that say that dolphins can like recognize themselves and know themselves. But like pods of male dolphins will kill baby dolphins so that they can then have a chance to reproduce with the female.
Oh, okay.
They will intentionally play with their food and torture them. They have been known to kidnap.
Ooh.
Like, they will hold young dolphins hostage. They will hold other pod members hostage, and they will intentionally harm them to, like, so they won't go and swim away. It's well known that sharks are afraid of dolphins. Yeah. Like, sharks will avoid dolphins, and there's pretty good reason for it. Dolphins will, like, harass and exploit a dolphin or a shark or literally any other body that they can get a hold of. Yeah. Like, dolphins are kind of terrible little creatures, and we all have this like idealized, oh, they're so beautiful jumping through the waves, they're friendly and playful, and like, yeah, that's true to an extent, but they're also nasty, horrible little creatures that are smart
they're
enough.
Wild animals.
Yeah, and they're also smart enough to figure stuff out, which means that they can figure stuff out and they will exploit it to as much as they want to.
Yeah. And I mean, when you say it like that, though, it kind of reminds me of a lot of the stuff we've heard about things like chimpanzees and other great apes, that they have sort of these pods and societies, but they also will go to war with one another,
Right.
and they will kill each other for reasons that are of varying degrees of logical to humans. I mean, obviously, we can't figure all of these things out, but that's kind of what it reminds me of. Is It's like they're smart enough to know the ins and outs of certain things, but they don't have laws or morality or anything like that.
I thought that was interesting because, that we can't apply human morality to these animals because we don't understand them. But like, also, we don't know dolphin philosophy.
Yeah.
Like we also do have humans that, like, we all pretty much everyone in civilized society around the world now agrees that, like, murder is not okay. But like, we still have people that do it.
Yeah.
And like there are societies that perpetuate it.
Right.
Yeah. When you think about the idea of them, like, killing young dolphins to prevent those genes from being passed on,
Right.
Yeah.
like, that's horrible from a human standpoint, but like, it also is logical. It makes perfect sense why they would do that.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
I mean, logic, the most logical thing is sometimes morally not good.
Yeah. I'm kind of impressed that they know enough to know that. That's kind of a wild thought.
Dolphins are crazy smart.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take a left turn here.
All right.
Because in my research for this, I found out that this question has actually already been answered
Beans.
by an old Sega Genesis video game
Oh,
by the name of
gosh.
Echo the Dolphin.
One of my faves.
Oh, I love the aesthetic of Echo the Dolphin.
It's wonderful. I did a deep dive into the lore of Echo the Dolphin, and it's just
Wait,
great.
it has lore?
Yeah, it has a really intricate story.
Aren't
I
there
wasn't
like
paying
aliens?
attention. Yeah, there are definitely aliens.
So basically, the way dolphin society works, the way dolphin civilization works, they use sonar to interact with mystical glyphs that are actually an ancient alien technology, which allows them to travel through time.
Okay.
So that's a thing. It may not actually be an alien technology, though, because some dolphins are given the ability to breathe underwater and travel through time from an ancient being known as the Asterite, which has roots in the sunken city of Atlantis and has actually existed on Earth
Oh, boy.
for at least 55 million years, and probably
okay.
longer than that. So it may be an ancient, and it is believed that the Asterite, which takes the form of a double helix, sort of
I remember
abstract thing, right?
Mhm.
So it is believed that the Asterite may be the source of all genetic code on Earth. So there's that, and it is speculated by Echo the Dolphin that in the future, the ocean will develop a mind of its own, and it will be connected to all over the planet by waterways traveling through the sky. And the dolphins, which are at this point the dominant species of Earth, have evolved so that they are now able to fly through a combination of internal helium sacs and telekinetic powers.
Logical.
Yeah, so Echo the Dolphin, way deeper than we knew as children.
I'm gonna throw this out there because it reminded me of something that involves aliens and dolphins. Is that there's a theory out there about the greys, the ones that are with the big bulbous heads and the big bulbous eyes and what have you. Apparently, there is a theory that they are actually hyper-evolved dolphins from the future traveling back in time.
Really?
Yeah.
I would buy that.
That just made me think of that.
I also learned in my research into Echo the Dolphin, because there was, in the year 2000, there was a reboot of the Echo the Dolphin franchise, which was not received as well. But I learned that this reboot was written by a guy named David Brin, who was a science fiction writer. And the reason they got him to write the Echo the Dolphin franchise is that he wrote a series of books known as the Uplift series. And one of the books in particular focuses heavily on dolphins in the future. The second book in his series is called Star Tide Rising, in which there is a spaceship crewed by 150 uplifted dolphins. And so these books, the world of this book, humanity is basically considered an insignificant race, having no known patrons, which is a species responsible for uplifting them or getting them into the space age, I guess, and having mostly primitive technology. But humans actually have 2 confirmed clients, which is like if you are a patron, you have clients. And these are dolphins and chimpanzees. And by becoming their patrons, humans have kind of inadvertently protected themselves from being forced into becoming the client of an older race. So this is just fascinating to me. I have never heard of this before. So specifically dolphins in this world, they're one of the clients of humans. And some of the best pilots in all the 5 galaxies, because of their aquatic origins, they have excellent instincts for 3D maneuvers. They're also important to planetary warfare because most of the other races in the galaxy are unaware of the strategic potential of the sea. Even though they're in a relatively early stage of evolution, so they find it difficult to speak. Like older dolphins find it difficult to speak. But they've also developed their own language, which is called dream speak, which I hope is exactly what it sounds like. And dolphins also are able to interact with humans with a dialect of English called Anglic. And they crew spaceships and have like advanced heightened technology. And I want to stress, I've not read this series. I really just discovered it today. So if anyone does know more about it, like, let me know. But that just sounds bizarrely, ridiculously fascinating to me.
Yeah. That's got some turns and twists that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Jim, we talked about this like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but there was a show where they were in space and there was a dolphin in a tank that could talk, I think.
Did we talk about this?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
We did. It was an old TV show.
It was an Outlaw Star, except the dolphin was a woman, right?
No.
It was Flipper.
Hold on.
Flipper, faster than lightning.
That was funnier to me than I thought it would be.
Give me a minute. I'm calling my father. Can I do this? Is this acceptable?
Sure.
I guess.
Phone a friend.
I don't have to, but
No,
I thought it might be
I'm
interesting.
I'm for it.
I'm trying to think of what that show might be.
Hi, what's up?
Hi, you're on Vaguely Scientific right now.
Hi.
I am, okay. All right.
So we're talking about dolphins, and I brought up there was an old show on TV that they were in a spacecraft, and there was a dolphin in a tank that could talk sometimes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but they weren't in a spacecraft. They were in the ocean.
Okay, speak more to that.
Ocean Quest?
Maybe.
I've heard of
Ocean
Sea
Was it
Quest.
Sequest?
Sequest?
Sequest. I think that's it. Sequest. What's his name was the captain? Was the guy who played in Jaws? I think.
That's a twist.
Yeah.
Roy Schneider,
I think
Jonathan
that's who the
Brandis.
captain was.
Okay.
It was like a submarine vehicle sort of a thing.
Okay, so I had the environment wrong. Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
needed to know.
Yeah, check it out. We used to love that show.
Yeah, we used to
Because
watch it a lot.
The dolphin could talk. Like, not really, but one guy had a thing that he could understand it.
Okay, it had like a brain piece or something.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Have fun.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I
you
now
go.
have to watch Sequest.
I think Whitney likes Sequest or watched it or knows of it.
Maybe I was talking to Whitney about it then.
Maybe.
I don't know.
One thing I did find out that I thought was really interesting is that I guess that dolphins and whales and in general, like cetaceans, I think they have some rudimentary language skills, and I think they might have names.
Whoa, wait, what?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I think this might be whales. I don't know if it applies to dolphins, but I think it does. Is that they have like individual names, like they have sounds that mean a specific person, basically.
Oh,
Weird.
that's huge if true.
Yeah, and it sounds like they have some sort of rudimentary language, and I mean, I don't know if we know to what extent, all of these things are, like how much meaning they have and how much
Sure.
information they communicate. But yeah, I mean, I was reading a little bit about it, and it sounds like they might have names, which I think is kind of neat. They can name each other.
It's interesting going into this question. I was thinking industrial civilization,
Mhm.
which would opposable thumbs and chemistry and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
require. But I feel like if it's not industrial, like a more primitive civilization, like language is the beginning of that.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking of it in terms, and this sort of ruled out the idea of like quote unquote civilization for me. But I mean, they kind of behave a lot like hunter gatherers, and it sort of just depends on how intelligent they are, whether they're closer to human or closer to not. But we started out as hunter gatherers, and then for hundreds of thousands of years of our history, that's all we did. So I don't know. There's the potential there if they can, keep on getting smarter, I suppose.
Well, we also painted woolly mammoths.
You mean like we walked up to them and just started smearing paint on them,
We
or
threw paint on them because fur is murder, Jim.
Oh.
Can I this is unrelated and we can choose to keep it or not, but
Okay.
it's related to society. There it is.
Sure.
Or a civilization. And it's my favorite art. My favorite cave art is it's in like a Neolithic bear, and it has the most like expressive like line weight and everything, like, and I look at it and I get kind of emotional because I'm like, wow, like somebody did that, like, so not a human as we know ourselves, but like somebody did that. They looked at a bear and like looked at it, I don't know. I get emotional about art stuff. You don't have to put that in.
I watched a really neat documentary, and I think that this is something that is hotly debated right now, but it's the what's the French cave that has the huge domed room with the painting? You know what I mean?
I do,
but I can't think.
It's not the Lascaux caves, is it?
I think it might be the Lascaux caves.
Okay, but I watched a documentary that was basically they looked at the animals along the ceiling of the room, and they were making the argument that these are constellations that they saw in the sky, and these animals represent, and because like the thing that made them think of that was, I guess there's a bull where Taurus should be, and there's something that looks like the Pleiades like next to the bull,
okay.
and they're like, if we extrapolate the shape and location of the rest of these animals, these could be constellations.
Yeah.
And I think it's hotly debated, but I watched it and I was like, that's so cool. Like X number of tens of thousands of years ago, someone looked at the sky and saw animals just like we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that so much. Actually, that is something I don't think I saw, but I wasn't looking for it explicitly. I don't know if dolphins and whales have like a sense of art or something like that.
I think they do that thing at like problematic places that might keep things like dolphins in tanks that are maybe too small, where they'll give the dolphin a paintbrush, and that dolphin has been trained to like smear paint on a canvas. But like, who can say if that is actual like artistic?
Right.
Like lots of animals, you can give a paintbrush and like have them smear paint on a thing. But
That reminds me of elephants. They have.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that elephants, because there's like places that you can go where elephants will paint pictures, and they think, oh, elephants are artistic, but most of the time, if I might be wrong about this, but I think it's just elephants can be trained to recreate a certain image, and it's just do this thing, and it's like learning the task and not so much being creative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's training.
Yeah. Which is interesting because, I mean, we've studied that in gorillas too. Like, the gorillas that have learned sign language, they don't ask questions.
Coco.
They'll answer questions and they'll tell you things, but they're not like inquisitive. They don't have that kind of part of their brain, I guess.
Yeah. I was reading something I thought was fascinating where they were saying when it comes to looking at intelligence in animals and comparing it to human intelligence, that dolphins actually make a really good control group because their brains are very, very different than primate brains.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at great apes, they are closer to human intelligence, or at least closer to the way that the sort of, what would you call it, like the animal-ish side of humanity, like the lower basal functions of like survive, eat, I guess fight, that kind of stuff. Whereas dolphins, they have those same things, but their brains are connected differently. So it's interesting to compare the two, basically, is what I was getting.
We broke apart from dolphins way earlier than we broke apart from apes.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I could ramble about this for a really long time because it's like there's all this interconnectivity between the current population of Earth. That we are all like descended from a point where like the small mammals like started to take over. So there are all similarities between the current reigning inhabitants of Earth that we all have, but like our brains are still much more developed and more complicated. And I mean, we were talking about this with the steak thing. Like, our brains fill in gaps. Like, we are, and whether that's a sophistication or a compensation, I'm not sure. But, like, I have to wonder if something like a dolphin's brain, which has been developed for, you know, life in the ocean and being an apex predator, where most of our rise to the top where we are as humanity is been that we are predators, but we are also very weak and capable of dying very easily. And being afraid most of the time. So, like, I don't know. It just makes me think of our central control center and how we function and how we see and perceive the world, and how a dolphin or a dolphin civilization, to kind of bring it back around, would they have that same, I hate to call it anxiety, because, like, as someone with anxiety, it's hard to simplify that, but, like, and at a base level, we are all anxious creatures because that's how we have to be.
It's a combination of just survival instinct, which most animals have, and also an understanding of our own mortality.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Well, this is one of those questions that, like, I agree, we could ramble on about. So listeners, please let us know what you think, and we'll talk about it more.
Yeah, we spent
later.
like 30 minutes on that. That was big.
Ask us follow-up questions.
We could go on and on. But we should go on to our second question this week. I guess
I love this one.
We're dropping down from the ocean to a smaller body of water, a specific body,
a freshwater body,
a freshwater body that we haven't talked about yet.
Fresh body water.
Delicious.
The question comes to us from Justin. If the Loch Ness monster is real, how could it have survived so long, and why can't people find it?
Can I take this?
Please.
Yeah.
So, like, there's the not fun answer, which is
that's what I was gonna do.
Which it's not, right?
It's not, and
it's not there. And, like, I'm so sorry, but it's really not.
I was just about to say I don't want to be that guy, but
you're in good company today, my dude.
But if the Loch Ness monster is real,
it's not.
But it's
no,
but it's why it's
but
why it's a difficult question to answer, because were it real, like, we definitely would have found it by now.
I think if we go back to our question from last episode about Bigfoot, and I think the Loch Ness monster, when it's not in the lake, just wanders around dressed as Bigfoot and hides in the woods,
fighting Apollo Creed.
Yeah. Allie, this episode has not dropped yet, so it makes no sense. But I promise there's context.
Not well.
So wait a minute.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ostensibly, you're telling me that Bigfoot comes out of the woods and fights Apollo Creed.
Well, in one movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Well,
why not?
Okay, so this is the second Simpsons reference of the episode, but there is.
You're on thin ice, my dude. You better be careful.
I'll talk about Simpsons more. I don't care.
Do it.
There's an episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns wants to curry the favor of people and stop being viewed as such a horrible person, and so he decides the way to do that is to discover the Loch Ness monster. So he flies to Scotland and drains the lake, thus revealing at last the location of the Loch Ness monster.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I love
so
it.
Why don't we just drain the
Why
lake?
don't we? That was going to be my question. Why don't we just drain the lake?
Yeah. I mean, there surely wouldn't be nearly as many ecological catastrophes from doing that as one would assume. Now, I actually did find something interesting. So this is, I should preface this by saying that this is part of the Loch Ness Monster is real.
Were
It's
you
hard
on
to call it a
conspiracy boards
conspiracy.
again, Jim? Were you on?
Yeah,
were
I
you on the
was.
forums again?
I was.
Okay.
But it's hard to call this a conspiracy because I don't think people are covering up the Loch Ness Monster. But
one
of the things-
my friend. Go on. Go on.
figures. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting was the idea that maybe there are a series of like connected tunnels that lead out into the ocean. So it's not actually stuck in the lake. It's actually able to come and go as it pleases, basically.
Plesiosaurs.
This is the last episode of the podcast.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm glad I got to be here for the last one. At least.
That idea has been touched on in stories before, that one of the ways that the Loch Ness Monster ended up, or I guess Nessie, we can call it Nessie, ended up in that lake is that there used to be an underwater canal that connected to the ocean and it got like trapped. That has been a proposed explanation before.
Ooh.
I would think that if there was a Nessie, and there's not, but if there was, I would think it would have to not be stuck in the lake, because in order for there to be a Nessie, there has to be a breeding population of Nessies.
Yeah.
And so there'd have to be several, and they would have to live in the ocean, I would think. You can't have, hundreds of thousands of Nessies in Loch Ness. It's not that big.
I mean, that's kind of what I thought about Bigfoot. We talked about why we can't find Bigfoot, and I would think there would have, unless it is a creature that lives for thousands of years, there would have to be more than one of them. But I did find...
Oh, of course. Nessie's a Time Lord. It regenerates. It is 67 million years old, and it has been... Oh,
Yeah.
Why didn't we think of that first, honestly?
Well, I didn't think of that. I thought of something different.
Okay.
Are you familiar? It was a movie. It was a book before it was a movie. Are you familiar with The Water Horse?
Yes.
That sounds familiar.
It's essentially World War II, torn Scotland, and a kid finds an egg, and it hatches into a plesiosauric-looking creature. Yeah.
Oh,
It's very
okay.
cute.
And he names it Crusoe, and it goes on to grow up to be a big dinosaur-looking thing. Well, it is. This thing is described to be a water horse, which has similar connections to different fairy creatures, such as the hippocamp and a kelpie. Kelpies are those are not the same thing, but people often think they are. But anyway, so a water horse in this story is a creature. It is described as a genderless creature that lays one egg before it dies. So there's only one in existence at any given time.
Huh. I think it's worth discussing Nessie's plesiosaurness,
Sure.
because it's not. It can't be. Like, there are no plesiosaurs. It cannot be that. So, if it has to look like that, if it just looks like a plesiosaur, then I would argue that it's some kind of convergent evolution scenario
Okay.
where over many, many years, it just sort of, like, the Nessie family line has evolved to look like a plesiosaur.
The House of Nessie.
Well, because when you think about, like, the shape of a whale, Wow, this is coming into my brain fast and furious.
Faster than you can get it out.
What if there was a horse type creature
Mm.
that started living a semi-aquatic life, and then over the millions of years, it evolved in such a way that it lost its limbs into fins and still had that long neck, and it got longer and skinnier because it didn't need to be doing horse things anymore. This is the worst. I hate that my brain did this to me.
So I like playing pretend. This is fun. But there is, much like when I watch things like Sharknado, there is a point where I cross a line and I have to say no.
Yeah.
And
You cannot suspend your disbelief
I
any
can't
longer.
do it anymore. And for Sharknado, it was basically right away. And for here, it was when you said a semi-aquatic horse life, because
Semi-aquatic horse life.
no. No, I just don't think so.
It's a great sentence, though.
That is the kind of folk creature, the hippocamp, which is literally that. It's a horse that lives in the water, and
Semi-aquatic horse life.
it's an aquatic horse life.
Semi-aquatic horse life. It's the new Pinterest aesthetic board is going to be semi-aquatic horse life.
That might have to be a T-shirt.
I just think it's so interesting. Like, much like we know that Bigfoot has obsessive compulsive disorder, like that's a definite fact that we know. I think that it's interesting that Nessie is definitely a female plesiosaur. Like,
Right.
like everybody, that's just an established thing that everybody agrees on.
I want to talk about the first thing you just said.
Okay.
We know that Bigfoot has obsessive compulsive disorder?
The stories are that if you spot Bigfoot, one way to attract Bigfoot is to scatter some like sticks and stuff.
Is Bigfoot a vampire now?
Right?
What is going on?
And it will, and Bigfoot will have to stop and arrange them so that they're all parallel. That's a thing that people have actually claimed, and it's just accepted.
We've talked about this before.
Yep.
It's coming back to me, but it just like didn't. I was just like,
He's
does
a man.
Bigfoot need a therapist? Like, what's going on?
Well, all
cow.
these people are always trying to like capture him. Like,
Doesn't he also really like apples? I feel like
He
we
also
talked
really
about
likes
this.
apples.
I mean, apples are great.
Yeah.
He also sometimes goes to the southern part of America and fight the chupacabra. You know, normal Bigfoot
Or
stuff.
Apollo Creed.
Or Apollo
Yeah.
Creed, who is the chupacabra.
Oh,
No,
now we're getting into the real deep lore.
I don't like that. I
need
don't
to
like
go
that
to
at
bed.
all. So I want to talk about. I went in a different direction, but started in the same place as you, Jim, which is the plesiosaur. It can't possibly be the plesiosaur thing.
Mm-hmm.
The reports of a monster inhabiting Loch Ness actually date back to like the 500s.
To the Cretaceous.
No.
Oh.
The reports of them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
To like the 500s, like the mid 500 AD, where there are stone carvings by like Pict people that depict a beast with like flippers in this lake. And the more common like modern version of Nessie originated in 1933. Where like a group of travelers or tourists or something claimed to see in the distance this massive animal near the lake, and they commissioned a big game hunter to go out and hunt it, and they did actually find these really big footprints, but those really big footprints were proved to be artificial. And so it is speculated that these people, and possibly even the big game hunter, were all in on it. But a year later, 1934, the surgeon's photo came out. And before, there wasn't really much connection to these Pict drawings. It was really just, there is a big animal there. But once that picture came out, then people started looking at the drawings from the 500s and saying, oh, it looks like this long-necked, flippered thing. And that's kind of where they started the comparison to the plesiosaur, because this ancient folkloric creature kind of fit the description of the fossils that we found of a plesiosaur.
Huh.
So I found that really fascinating.
I want to mention
Go ahead.
When you said they found footprints, I'm like, but they don't have feet, man.
Right. And that's because it was before they even thought that it had flippers. So the footprints resembled kind of like a hippopotamus footprint, thinking that it was like a big soft-footed animal.
What if it's just a hippo that someone accidentally left out and it got in the lake?
What's a hippocamp?
I actually went somewhere similar, Jim, but I ended up with a
With
much
something
more
sane, I
logical
hope.
response, which is I wonder if it's a seal or a sea lion.
Oh,
Huh.
that could have
That,
been a
like,
thing.
again, perspective on water is weird. It's hard to often
Yeah.
tell how far something away something is, but like seals can look very sleek when they poke out of the water. They have long necks. They kind of move interestingly through the water. I don't think Loch Ness is that far away from the ocean. It's definitely blocked off, but
Yeah.
it's not impossible that something or many of something like that could have gotten in.
Yeah. And I mean, even to the point of it being blocked off, also, a human could have just deposited an animal or animals. And, like, I don't know, a circus went under and they're like, hey, this is water. Let's put our seals here.
Well,
Yeah.
seals, I just Googled it. Seals are found all around Scotland's coast and inshore waters.
Oh.
Whatever. I just solved the Nessie mystery. You're welcome.
Figured it out.
Send me, Venmo me like $300.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one more thing
Please.
that Jim mentioned that I hinted at a little bit. Because, Jim, you didn't think that the Loch Ness Monster was a conspiracy. You didn't think anyone was, like, actually hiding it, right?
I mean, I would assume
I learned
they would want to find it so they can get more tourism.
Well, I learned in the history of the stories of Nessie, despite the lack of conclusive evidence, the Loch Ness Monster remains popular and profitable, bringing in the 21st century nearly $80 million annually to Scotland's economy. So people searching for the Loch Ness Monster is thought to be more profitable than if they were to find it and you could just see pictures of it on the internet or visit it at a zoo. So I think someone is hiding Nessie, to keep the tourism industry booming.
Yeah. The Scottish government has Nessie locked up in Area 51.
Yep. The Scottish government has her in Area 51.
They're renting space. It's a whole treaty thing.
I'm staggered that it's that much money.
It's
that is
huge.
a massive amount of money.
So I think it's all a government conspiracy keeping Nessie from the public to boost Scotland's economy, and Bigfoot is Sylvester Stallone.
Another animal that I saw that was frequently noted to possibly be Nessie, I guess there are a lot of eels in Loch Ness.
Oh.
And they said if there was an abnormally large eel that happened to break the surface of the water or leave like a wake behind it, then people might think that's the Nessie.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that we're coming to a point of like is it Occam's razor?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like the simple solution is that it's not there.
It's just not there.
Yeah.
And
it's cool to think about.
Yeah.
I think it's that same problem of as long as you haven't found it, people can still say you just weren't looking in the right place, which is why I think draining the lake is really the only way you could ever prove it definitively.
It's fair. Don't do it. But it's fair.
I don't think it's a good idea or worth it.
No.
But that if you needed to actually prove that there's no Loch Ness Monster, I feel like that's the only way you could accomplish that.
I have one more thing.
Okay.
That I'm not sure if it's important, but we're talking about draining the lake.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned yesterday or 2 days ago that there's a theory that the Mediterranean Sea was dried up at one point because the Strait of Gibraltar got closed. It got blocked off by something.
Oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it completely drained out, and then at 5 million years ago, it opened back up and flooded back in at the point where it was 90% refilled within the first year of it being open. And the amount of water that was pouring in was catastrophically powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I was thinking of draining the lake, and I wonder what we would find if we drain the Mediterranean. Like, what's down there?
Like,
There would be so many rad fossils.
So many. Let's drain the Mediterranean.
Let's
and
drain
then
the
we'll
Mediterranean.
we'll figure that one out, and then we'll go back for Loch Ness, and then ruin
All
ruin Scotland's economy.
I feel like I heard Africa is moving north, so that might happen eventually.
just like due to tectonics.
Yeah.
Oh.
If that is the direction Africa is moving, then eventually I would assume that it will
Yeah.
seal that off again. And
Well, that's our new vaguely scientific science initiative is drain the Mediterranean.
this would be a good thing because there would be more arable land.
Mhm.
There's going to be lots of nutrients in that patch of soil.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And B, there will be more water out in the regular ocean, which it will raise the sea level, but it will mean that there's more salt water. There's a higher density of salt water, which will counteract some of the fresh water that is melting from the glaciers.
Interesting.
Is it?
So we solved the Loch Ness monster thing, and we're counteracting global warming.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
Venmo me $400.
we're not counteracting it.
That's
We're
okay.
doing important work here.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, I guess while we tackle that, let us know, could the Loch Ness Monster form a civilization with dolphins
In the Mediterranean.
in the Mediterranean before we drain it?
Mm-hmm. Or after.
Or after.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know.
Preferably, well, I don't know now. Do we have any listener mail this week?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet @vaguelysci. And this week, our email comes to us from Master Jeff, and it is in regards to episode 26. This time, it's just raining meat. And Master Jeff says, "Hi, Vaguely Scientific. I only discovered your show recently, and I have a lot of catching up to do, but I just listened to your prediction of which animal would take over the world if mankind went extinct. And I have to ask, what makes you so sure it would be an animal that already lives on Earth? Maybe you've already answered this. I have quite a few episodes to go."
Oh no. Have we answered that? I
I
don't
don't
think so.
think so.
I mean, it's gonna be aliens.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to show up and be like, well, the humans have all extincted themselves, so let's just use their houses.
They're okay. So humanity is wiped out by alien squatters.
Now, if you think about the idea that dolphins evolve into the grays, then actually they are from Earth.
Oh boy.
I gotta stop going on the internet.
You really need to get off those forums, Jim. I'm
Yeah.
trying to tell you.
Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. It really is. Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all the podcast places. There's lots of them. You can Google us and it'll show you. And also there's a list on our website. So there, do that.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, and subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Especially if they're marine biologists.
Yeah, because then they can tell us everything we've done wrong today. Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. I'm super tempted to make that shirt.
Which shirt?
What is it? Semi-aquatic horse lifestyle?
Living the semi-aquatic horse lifestyle, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Jeez. Yeah, go look for that. It might be there.
It might be there. Oh, the quote at the beginning of this episode was from astronomer Arthur Stanley Eddington. Thank you to Allie for being our guest this week.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I'm going to head out to the Pillars of Heracles and do some
Sweet.
stuff. I'll talk to you guys later.
Awesome.
Sounds good. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Allie.
And that's the way the cookie crumbled.
Toodaloo, everyone.
Now I want cookies.
My notes at the top for the dolphin question, it says, would dolphins civilize on porpoise?
I can't do this show anymore. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna start, and
Okay.
we'll see where it goes.